So lads, Caitlin Clark is out injured right now, and it appears that we know, well, she's out injured with a groin injury, and it appears there's footage of how it happened. And this one's on the coach. This one seems to be on the coach, but
Stephanie White's recent comments about Caitlin Clark's injury have left a lot of fans frustrated, and it's not hard to see why. When asked about Clark's condition, White gave vague, unhelpful answers and seemed unwilling to provide any real clarity. Her lack of urgency has many questioning whether she's truly prioritizing Clark's health. So before we get into what went wrong in that press conference, let me ask you, is Stephanie White the right coach to lead Caitlin Clark and this team, or is she holding back one of the league's brightest stars? Drop your thoughts in the comments because
about this groin injury and how much of an absence do you expect from her beyond today?
Yeah, late last night. I think it's very much a day-to-day thing, how she responds to treatment. I stay in my lane and let our strength and conditioning and our physical, our AT staff do what they do best. But yeah, I found out late last night, and then we'll treat it day to day.
Back-to-back a factor at all with that?
I mean, I don't know if it's a factor from a physical standpoint, from an athletic training standpoint. Certainly in my mind, it is. But at the same time, she's shown that she's tough and she's a quick healer. So we'll see.
Was it something she reported yesterday, like her pain in the left groin?
It had to have been at some point during the day because they took her out yesterday, for the MRI. So I'm not exactly sure. I didn't hear about it until we heard from our training staff last night.
And with the MRI, did it show a strain or anything, or?
I don't. You'll have to ask our training staff. Yeah.
This situation is raising some serious red flags. Next voice. Here we are again, another Caitlin Clark injury, and once again, Coach Stephanie White's response has left fans confused and frustrated. Just before the Fever's game against the Sparks, Clark was ruled out with a groin injury. When asked about it, White simply said, "It's a day-to-day thing. I let our strength and conditioning staff handle it. I stay in my lane." Really? This is your franchise player, the face of the league, and that's all you've got to say? Reporters asked reasonable questions about Clark's health and timeline, but White offered almost no information. She admitted she only found out about the injury the night before and that Clark had an MRI, but she refused to share any details. It all came across as strangely casual, given the circumstances. And for many fans, this isn't new. As analyst Rachel DeMita pointed out, trust in the Fever organization has already taken a hit. Just look at how they handled the Dana Evans situation: vague statements and unclear timelines. Now we're seeing that same lack of transparency with Clark. What makes things worse is the timing of Clark's injury. She went down with just 12 seconds left in a game the Fever had already secured. So why was she still on the court? That's a coaching decision and a costly one. Yet when asked about it, White it didn't take responsibility. Just more of the same. I stay in my lane. For fans who care about Caitlin Clark and about accountability, this entire situation just doesn't sit right. Next voice. Of the most frustrating parts of Caitlin Clark's current injury situation is this. For years of college basketball, she never missed a single game due to injury. Yet in just 6 weeks with a professional training staff in the WNBA, she's already dealing with her second setback, now a groin issue. That's not just bad luck. It points to deeper concerns about how her health and workload are being managed. Then there's head coach Stephanie White's now widely criticized response. I stay in my lane. She used that phrase when asked about Clark's MRI results, and again when pressed about her return timeline. At some point, that line stops sounding like professionalism and starts sounding like deflection. As head coach, White is expected to lead, not stand on the sidelines when it comes to her star players' well-being. She even admitted she wasn't sure when Clark suffered the injury. That's deeply concerning, especially when we're talking about one of the league's most important players. As of now, there's still no clear update on when she returns, whether it's the next game or weeks down the line. No one seems to know. This lack of transparency and direction is exactly what you don't want when building a team around a generational talent, and the issues go beyond injury management. From a basketball standpoint, Clark hasn't been set up for success. Coach White has implemented a slow, structured offense that doesn't play to Clark's natural strengths. Clark excels in fast-paced, open-court play where she can read the floor, push the tempo.
Yeah, just with Caitlin out, you're down to 9 available players, and it's the first day of a back-to-back. Just what are you doing to try and manage minutes and make sure, your starters don't get overuse?
Well, I think in game it's not going to be as much about managing minutes as positioning us to win the ball game. If we're in a position where we can do that, then we will. I think more so, yesterday being off physically and having more of a mental day and coming in today and making sure that we just highlight the high level stuff. Not overload them, so to speak, from a mental standpoint. Highlight high level stuff. Get some shots up. It's more so about what we're doing outside of game right now, and we got to save their body
And create opportunities. But instead, she's being used off the ball in a half-court system that limits her effectiveness. It's like owning a high-performance car and only driving it in first gear. You're not getting the best out of what you have, and in this case, what you have is a once-in-a-generation player who should be the focal point of the entire offense. Next voice. Frustration around Caitlin Clark's injury situation is growing, and with good reason. Earlier this season, when Clark was finally allowed to play her natural game against the New York Liberty, she exploded for 32 points, leading the Fever to hand the defending champions their first loss of the season. It was a glimpse of what this team could be when Clark plays to her strengths. But instead of building on that success, head coach Stephanie White quickly reverted to a slow, possession-based offense that clearly doesn't fit this roster or Clark's style of play. That decision alone has left many fans wondering if the coach truly understands or values what Clark brings to the court. Even more concerning than the system is how White has handled Clark's injuries. When Clark was ruled out with a groin injury just before a game against the Sparks, White's response was far from reassuring. She admitted she didn't know the exact timing of the injury, refused to share details about Clark's MRI results, and gave no clear timeline for her return. Instead, she repeatedly said she stays in her lane, leaving fans and media without real answers. This phrase, "I stay in my lane," has become White's go-to line when pressed on Clark's condition. But instead of sounding professional, it comes across as dismissive and disconnected, especially when you consider that managing player health is a core responsibility for any head coach. This isn't the first time we've seen this pattern. Earlier in the season, when Clark missed 5 games with a quad injury, communication was equally vague and frustrating. Now, with this new groin issue, fans have every right to wonder, is Stephanie White more focused on proving her system works than on ensuring her star player stays healthy and thrives? Let's be honest, the latest injury might have been preventable. Clark was hurt in the final seconds of a game the Fever had already won, during what's commonly called garbage time. Given Clark had recently returned from another injury, most coaches would have taken her out to protect her from further harm. White did not, and now the team is paying the price. There's a bigger story here about coaching philosophy and player management. White came to Indiana with a vision for a motion offense, a slow, methodical style focused on ball movement and possession control. But this approach clashes with the kind of player Clark is. Caitlin Clark is a dynamic, fast-paced playmaker who thrives in transition and open-court situations. She's best when she can use her speed, vision, and creativity to break defenses down. Instead of adapting the offense to maximize Clark's unique skills, White has forced her to play off the ball in a half-court system that limits her impact. That's not coaching, it's mismanagement. It's like having a high-performance car and only driving it in first gear. Managing player health is another critical part of a head coach's job, one that White seems to have neglected. Saying "I stay in my lane" when asked about Clark's injuries isn't professionalism, it's avoidance. A coach needs to be involved in treatment plans, informed about injuries, and active in deciding playing time and rest. Pretending that's not my job when your franchise player is sidelined is simply unacceptable. Clark is just starting her second professional season, a crucial time for growth, development, and momentum. Instead, she's dealing with recurring injuries, unclear communication, and a system that doesn't highlight her talents. Her status as an all-star, once all but guaranteed, is now at risk because of these issues. Caitlin Clark has done more for the WNBA in 2 seasons than most players manage in a lifetime. She's packed arenas, broken viewership records, and brought a new wave of fans to the sport. She deserves a team and a coach that supports her, protects her, and builds around her strengths. Unfortunately, that's not what she's getting. The Fever's struggles without Clark show just how dependent the team is on her. When she missed 6 games earlier this season, the Fever went to 2-4 and dropped below .50 overall. Despite this, White continues making choices that either jeopardize Clark's health or restrict her effectiveness when she's on the court. What's most troubling is how White handles her role as head coach. She behaves more like a hands-off executive than an engaged leader. When your franchise player gets injured, the expectation is to stay involved, ask questions, understand the treatment process, and make smart decisions about how and when the player should be used. Instead, White seems content to leave everything to the training staff, repeating her "I stay in my lane" mantra. This isn't leadership, it's a refusal to be accountable. And it sends a dangerous message to the entire team. If the coach isn't concerned about the health of the team's star player, what does that say to the rest of the players? It risks creating a culture where athletes feel like replaceable parts, rather than valued members of the organization. Media and analysts covering the league have noticed, too. Many have publicly expressed frustration with the lack of transparency from the Fever. When the people whose job it is to report on your team are complaining about being stonewalled, it signals a broken communication strategy that damages the organization's credibility. Look at how other top coaches handle star players' injuries. Coaches like Eric Spoelstra with Jimmy Butler or Steve Kerr with Stephen Curry take an active role in managing their players' health. They stay informed, work closely with medical staff, and communicate clearly and honestly with the public.